Well, as part of our speaker series and our look at trends, we've invited Jason Gregory, the Executive Vice President for the Wichita Downtown Development Corporation, to come and speak to us today. Jason is responsible for launching and guiding various initiatives leading the implementation of Project Downtown, Wichita Downtown Master Plan, and the Wichita Downtown Development Corporation Strategic Business Plan. He also provides key leadership for the Downtown Design Resource Center, whose mission is to connect and engage individuals in the development of Wichita's downtown. Jason is a Wichita area native, Cheney, I believe it is. All right, good Cheney, represented today. He has a diverse background in business, landscape architecture, urban design, project management, and construction. He received a bachelor's degree in business administration from Friends University and a master's degree in landscape architecture from Kansas State University. So he's got the nicest yard in Cheney. Yeah. Jason is an elected school board member for USD 268 in Cheney and is involved in his local church. He also volunteers his time coaching numerous youth sports. He is a member of the International Downtown Association and is a member of the Wichita Parks Foundation Board of Directors. Jason is married to his wife, Angie, and they have 3 sons. Here is Jason.
Okay. Welcome, Jason. How's the injury?
So it's good. And she mentioned that youth sports. I used to tell people I had a better story, but this was actually coaching youth sports that I got this injury. So oh, there it is. There we go. Well, first off, thank you for having me. Typically, a lot of you I know well, others I'm meeting for the first time today, but it's a pleasure to be here in front of this body. Obviously, you guys represent the Sedgwick County and Butler County communities that represent the greater Wichita area. And so having the opportunity to come talk about downtown, you're used to me talking about downtown. But today I think I want to take a different approach. I'm going to put on a different hat because other people know me as Mr. Cheney and instead of Mr. Downtown. And aside from my family, I'm probably most proud of my community of Cheney, Kansas. I grew up on a farm, like she said, south of Cheney. I'm still a farm kid at heart, and so the irony that I lead the economic development effort for the urban center for our region is ironic, especially for my father who farms and doesn't have a clue what I do. But today, what I'd like to talk to this group about, and a question I get asked a lot, particularly as a small community in Sedgwick County, what is downtown? Why should I care about downtown Wichita? Why are we investing money in downtown Wichita, and what's the relevance that it has to Mays, Andover, Derby, Cheney, Colwich? And so with that, I'd like to talk a little bit about, I'll give some background to our organization, what we do. Some of you are familiar with this, but those of you that aren't, the Downtown Development Corporation, so we're a 501c3 nonprofit. We're not the city. We are a private company. We are funded, though, through a property tax mill levy. So the county assesses the properties in the downtown district, and we have a agreement with the city to provide the services that we do. So the lion's share of the stakeholders that pay into that mill levy, though, are represented on our board of directors. So in a sense, they are our stakeholders. We're working on their behalf every day when we get up to try to spur and stimulate investment in downtown Wichita. Also wanted to talk a little bit about Project Downtown, the impetus for a lot of the revitalization that we have seen since basically 2011. Many of you in your communities and your jurisdictions obviously have community plans. One of the things I think the city of Wichita did well and did right in partnership with our organization when they did Project Downtown is they built the plan on market economics. So in addition to, and in my background, I've been a part of many community planning efforts, and a lot of folks fail because it's just a visioning exercise, and then it gets put on the shelf, and everybody forgets about what they talked about. But as the stakeholders or the private sector implementers of the plan, we constantly make sure that it's relevant. And when they started that plan, they looked at what our downtown markets could actually do. So what's the market potential for downtown Wichita? And then they built the vision on top of that. And I really think that's in large part the success that we've seen. Globally, we've seen about $450 million in investment in the downtown SMID district since 2011. And this map here is a representation, obviously, no one area. The size and scope of those projects are continually to increase. But the public sector, one of the main things with Project Downtown, it talked about the public sector being a catalyst for private sector development. And really, that has really proven itself out. The city of Wichita has stepped up in many ways to be a catalyst. In fact, the plan itself was built around catalyst sites, so city-owned properties that could be catalysts for future development. But that the city would not build it and hope they came, but build it in conjunction with the private sector to stimulate that investment. The other thing about downtown Wichita that's really a challenge is that it's a large geographic area. If you look, it's about a mile square. Urban renewal in the 60s and 70s tore down every other building, so we've got a surface parking lot next to what was once a building in almost the entire district. So walkability, improving the connectivity are really key things that we're talking about. And one of our focus since day one has been to focus on Douglas Avenue. And really, that's our main street. Many communities have a main street or that epicenter. Douglas is our postcard avenue, our Michigan Avenue. And so we've put a heightened concentration on really making sure that investment happens there. And you can see we've seen over $280 million in investment. And again, private sector stepping up in a lot of cases to spur that private sector development. So let's back out and shift from that overview of the WDDC in downtown. Let's talk about from a regional context. So the Greater Wichita Partnership, going on 2 years now, was created with a new strategy. And really they looked at really 6 key priorities listed here. One of those being downtown vitality. And really when you peel back all the layers, downtown has a sliver of influence with every single one of these priorities. Now I want to get into kind of the reasons why. So when you think about Wichita, this region as a whole, we're competing not necessarily even nationally, but globally. And when you start talking about metropolitan areas, you're really talking about regions. So obviously, but when you talk about South Central Kansas, the greater nation global doesn't know where that is. When we talk to site selectors, we're lucky if we can get them to know where Wichita's at in the state of Kansas. So when we talk about Wichita, we're really talking about that 10-county region and downtown Wichita being that epicenter of urban activity. So much with Project Downtown is our plan for development, for growth, for the urban center. We also have that same plan in Bragg for the regional. And again, I talked about catalyst. Bragg really focuses on those things that we're already doing well, what the industry sectors are that we can continue to build upon. And I think later, potentially the partnership will come and talk specifically about that. I won't dive into those specifics today, just due to time. So economic development, I talked about a shift with the partnership. There was what I want to say the old way, the 20th century model was throw cash at companies and hope that you can woo them here. The new model is really, and Oklahoma City is a great example of this. American Airlines, many of you know that story, they lost to Indianapolis, and they came back and asked, what was wrong with the $200 million that we were going to give to you? And they basically said, you guys haven't invested in yourself, and so they ended up going to Indianapolis. And so that was a lesson for Oklahoma City to say, we have to invest in ourselves from an infrastructure, from a quality of life standpoint, if we're going to be an attractor for these companies. So you can see here, the 21st century model really is a public-private partnership. It's very strategic, laser recruitment. So I talked about those industry clusters. We're not just shotgun approaching it. We're really going after targeted companies, targeted industries, high value, highly trained talent. So not just any job will do. We want the highly skilled, highly educated. The infrastructure used to be, roads or other infrastructure. Now it's educational attainment. So companies that are looking at our region are looking at our workforce and how well equipped are those folks. And then it's driven by an overall vision. And I think now we collectively, as a region, have both that vision and look forward. At the end of the day, though, it's all about talent. And everybody hears that. You've heard that buzzword, attracting and retaining talent. So what do I mean by that? So it's this group called the millennials, right? They have different wants and needs. We know this nationally. We know trend-wise. We're seeing a shift, obviously, here locally. I'll talk a little bit about that. But not only the millennials, but Gen Z. So my kids, that's the next generation of labor. And so these companies are looking at not next year, but 15. What's the 20-year pipeline for the workforce that they're going to need? And what we know is that group of individuals want to be in urban centers. They want to be within 3 miles of an urban center. That's what their preferences are. It's a complete shift in the boomer generation that has driven our economy since World War II. And that's really what's driving the renaissance that we're seeing. And it's things like this that this group is really interested in. They want quality of life. So there's a reason that the pop-up urban park project that we did down here on Douglas Avenue, we filled in a former hole in the ground, and it's activated daily with food trucks. There's a reason that the millennials love that. And there's also a reason that that would never work out on, one of our big box thoroughfares if we stuck that out there on a parking lot and said, hey, come. It doesn't have the intimacy, it doesn't have the human scale, it doesn't have the walkable feel that does in the urban setting. And so we know from places like Austin, from places like Oklahoma City, 30 years ago, Austin was the same size as Wichita. They made strategic decisions then to become very walkable urban. They focused on density. In fact, Austin at the time established a growth boundary. They didn't let any more growth happen on the periphery. All the development had to happen internally, and you can see what's happened now. I mean, they're 2 to 3 times the size of Wichita, and they've tremendous growth in that community since making those decisions again to invest in themselves. The other thing we're seeing is the national trend of companies choosing to relocate to downtown, and there's many reasons, and it's not just large companies. Small companies are making this decision too, particularly startups. Again, I talked about attracting and retaining the talent, but a lot of people that we talk to that move to downtown, it's because that's part of their culture. They want to be seen by either their peers, their clients, or their employees as somebody who's embracing that urban culture. It increases opportunity for collaboration. So an example I give, so if I get in my car and I drive to Sonic for lunch, it's just me, myself, and my car interacting. But if I walk down to the pop-up park, I see no fewer than probably 20 people I know. There's serendipitous conversations, and it's that conversation that these companies are all excited and interested in. And they want to be able to generate that because they know that pays dividends to them. And then the other story that we're hearing is a lot of them they want to be part of the story. So they want to be part of the city's revitalization effort. They want that to be part of their marketing and be able to say, we were a contributor because we helped in the development of the urban core. And how do we know that? Well, that's because that's what Cargill told us. And Cargill's a global company. They have obviously sites in many countries, many cities across the nation. And they chose to stay in Wichita, but they chose to stay in downtown, particularly Old Town, because of those things. It was all, to them, it was, and I'll paraphrase a quote, it was dynamic, aesthetic, and collaborative work environment. They felt that was the key for them to attracting the talented workforce they're going to need for the next 20 years. And so they'll soon be demolishing the former Wichita Eagle building and building this state-of-the-art headquarter facility in downtown Wichita. But it was because they wanted to be able to take their clients at lunch to a whole host of food offerings across the street and be able to entertain their employees and customers in that regard. So some other national trends I think are important for us to watch, and that's what we try to do is bring these to local light because it's happening here as well. In 1950, what spurred a lot of our suburban development as we know it was, again, the populations with children. 50% of all households in 1950 had kids in them. Only 25% of all households today have children. And for the next 20 years, it's going to be only about 14%. So those baby boomers that I talked about that have been driving this, the kids are gone now. And we already know that they're downsizing. A lot of them are approaching retirement or retiring. They don't want to take care of the yard anymore, or they're getting too old to do those types of tasks. And so they're downsizing. They want to move downtown where they're close to the coffee shop, where they can walk to the concert, where they can close their condo and go to the vacation and not have to worry about the yard. The other group that's driving it are the millennials. Most of them aren't getting married till well after, than folks did 20, 30 years ago. Now they're waiting till later in life to A, get married, and B, have children. And if they're having children, they're having fewer. The family sizes are much smaller now. In a lot of cases, it's single parent households. They prefer to be in an urban environment. Another huge shift, other than the demographics, is income property market. So you can see from 92 to 2000, walkable urban, investment properties. So this would be anything other than your place of residence. So whether that's commercial or residential income property, suburban made up the lion's share of the market. Today, it's almost 50-50, and urban continues to outpace by far what's being built and from a valuation standpoint. So my point, though, today, and this is one thing that I always bring up, is that it's not about downtown versus the suburbs. It can never be that conversation. We have to have a healthy suburbs. We have to have a healthy suburban market. Our communities are dependent, our bedroom communities like Cheney, are dependent on Wichita for what? They're dependent on it for jobs. So many people that live and choose Cheney as a community are dependent on Wichita for jobs. But at the end of the day, the only thing that we're going to be able to do, or the only way that we're going to be able to increase jobs is by having a vibrant urban core. Site selectors come here, and for years they saw vacant buildings in our downtown. And no offense, but that's the first impression. That's the impression they have when they leave here. They may not even make it to your community, or they may not even make it to that suburban market where they're looking to place a new factory. If that downtown market, the lights are out and they don't feel like it's thriving, they're not going to look any farther. And so we have to have that urban center, whether you live or work there, it's still important because it's how we grow jobs. I think one last thing that I think is really important to note, particularly from your vantage point as, in a lot of cases, elected officials or administrators who are stewards of tax dollars. I know as a school board member, we're constantly talking about what's the best return on our investment, because every decision you make is with limited resources, right? So whether that's investing in infrastructure, nationally, urban centers produce 12 times more tax revenue than their suburban counterparts. And a lot of that obviously is because of the density. So we've built a lot of our communities the past 50 years with the same amount of infrastructure investment. In fact, more so in a lot of cases, particularly suburban cul-de-sac type developments that don't have the same return on investment as higher density areas. Walkable neighborhoods, so walkable, I'm going to say the old neighborhoods, your College Hill, your Riverside, traditionally, and this is again national numbers, walkable neighborhoods produce 6 times more tax revenue than their suburban counterparts. And a lot of that in lion's share, that is based on a density. We just don't have the density to offset those costs. I know we've done a study here locally, downtown Wichita compared to the rest of the metropolitan area is about 5 times more valuable from a valuation standpoint than the rest of the metropolitan area. So when you're making a return on investment, you're talking about the life cycle costs, right, of that infrastructure. So it's not only the cost to build it, because there's that, but whether it's a suburban neighborhood where we're taxing special assessments, or you're talking about a parking garage in downtown, that's public dollars, right, supporting that infrastructure. So we have to be mindful of what's the life cycle cost of that and what's the return on that investment. And what we found, and I think the comprehensive planning effort that was just done for Sedgwick County, our infrastructure costs are enormous, and we've got a huge hill to climb in the next 20 years, 20, 30 years with our infrastructure. So building more roads every time we kick the can down the road, it just means that at some point that tax base has to support that. And so one of the things, that plan talked about, not only downtown, but how do we re-densify some of our neighborhoods. Chris Linebarger was here earlier this year, and he really talked about one of the strategies that they're looking at, particularly in major metros like Dallas and Fort Worth, where suburbanization is much more rampant than here, is how are they converting those suburban developments into walkable urban? And they're seeing the return on that investment, again, densifying areas to have a better return on that tax dollar. I guess just in closing, and then I definitely want to stand for any questions, but as a Cheney native and resident, we're all in this together. Downtown Wichita has obviously importance for the Wichita metropolitan area, but it's still very impactful and very important for the region. At the end of the day, it's all about job creation. How do we attract and retain the next generation of people? How many of you have kids that have either moved away or said that they're not going to stay here? We have to build a place that they say they're willing to stay. And for a lot of millennials, it's a quality of life decision. Many of those either graduate with a degree and they go choose the city before they have the job. We know this. People are moving in droves to Austin, Texas because it's cool, or they're moving to Portland, Oregon because it's a cool place. Well, I think Wichita, Kansas is a pretty cool place. I think South Central Kansas is a pretty cool place. But we have to have a reason. I want to have a reason that my kids stay here too. So with that, I will stand for questions.